Hello, aspirants, and welcome. Today, we're going to break down a very critical case study, the recent Mundathikode fireworks tragedy in Kerala.
That's right. And this isn't just a news headline. For your GS Paper 3, this is a perfect example of a man-made disaster, and it really exposes the challenges within our disaster management framework. So let's dive right in.
This line from one of the reports, it really says it all, doesn't it? It absolutely does. It frames the entire issue. We're not looking at a random accident here, but a tragedy that stems from a deep, recurring conflict between long-held traditions and the non-negotiable roles of public safety. Okay, here's our plan. We're going to tackle this just like you would structure a good mains answer. First, we'll look at the incident itself, then we'll zoom out to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. After that, we'll dig into the root causes, talk about solutions, and most importantly, we'll link everything directly back to your syllabus.
So, let's set the scene. It's April 21st in Mundathikode, which is near Thrissur city. A makeshift fireworks unit is busy preparing for the famous Thrissur Pooram, a festival known for its massive, spectacular fireworks displays. And that's where everything went wrong. The human cost was just staggering. Unofficial reports put the number of lives lost at 15. A truly stark figure that reminds us of the sheer scale of this tragedy. And it didn't end with the fatalities. On top of that, more than 24 people were severely injured. The series of blasts was so powerful that it damaged about 50 houses nearby, creating a massive crisis for the entire local community. Now, in the aftermath, the administration declared it a state-specific disaster. This is a really important term for you to note. It's basically an administrative tool to fast-track relief and compensation. But as we'll see, using this term also forces us to ask some tough questions about our overall disaster preparedness. You know, the really heartbreaking part is that this was not a one-off event. To get the full picture, you have to see this tragedy as part of a very disturbing pattern.
Exactly. It's a pattern of negligence that unfortunately connects directly back to a tragically similar incident in 2016 at the Puddingal Temple.
Just look at this timeline. It tells a story of inaction. After the Puttnagal tragedy in 2016, a judicial commission was set up and it recommended very strict safety measures. But what happened over the next 8 years? Those crucial regulations were, and this is a direct quote from the analysis, progressively sidelined. So the explosion at Mundathikode in 2024 wasn't just a surprise. It was the direct, predictable result of lessons that were never learned. All right, this is the core of it for your mains answer. You must go beyond just describing what happened. You need to do a thorough root cause analysis to explain why it happened by really getting into the deep systemic failures. You know, a really high-scoring answer will always make a clear distinction between these two things. On one hand, you have the immediate causes, the on-the-ground mistakes, right? The technical lapses. But then you have to dig deeper to the systemic causes. These are the long-term failures in our regulations and even in our socio-political environment that allowed those mistakes to occur. And the immediate causes at Mundathikode, well, it's a textbook example of what not to do. Eyewitnesses and experts pointed out a whole list of violations. Storage sheds built way too close to each other, far too much explosive material being stockpiled, untrained workers without any safety gear, and on top of it all, extremely lax enforcement from the authorities. It was, quite literally, a disaster waiting to happen. Now, let's talk about the systemic cause. And this is where the real governance challenge comes in. The source material points to this deep entanglement of religious festivals with what it calls vote bank politics. This can create immense pressure on officials, often discouraging them from enforcing safety rules as strictly as they should. Understanding this political dimension is absolutely critical for complete analysis. Remember, in the civil services exam, just analyzing the problem is only doing half the job.
That's right. The other, equally important half is presenting a clear, practical way forward. Your answer must always be solution-oriented.
So what are these solutions? Well, first things first, strict, uncompromising enforcement of the laws that are already on the books. Second, we need clear accountability. Officials who fail in their duties must be held responsible. And third, this can't just be a top-down approach. We need sustained public awareness campaigns to educate everyone about the huge risks involved with these high-decibel fireworks, especially for children and the elderly. And here's a fantastic point you can add to your answers, a real value add. Let's look beyond just administrative reforms and consider technological solutions. For instance, cold spark technology. It's a modern alternative that gives you those brilliant visual effects without the huge fire and explosion risks that come with traditional gunpowder. It represents a clear path toward much safer celebrations. Okay, let's bring it all together now. The most important part for you is how you can use all this information effectively, both in your GS Paper 3 exam and, of course, in your personality test. Just think about it. Under the syllabus topic of man-made disasters, the Mundathikode tragedy is a classic case study. It perfectly illustrates the failures in the mitigation and prevention stages of the disaster management cycle. And it gives you a real-world example to critically analyze the role of different enforcement and licensing agencies. And you should absolutely be ready for a question like this in your interview. Imagine the board asks you, as a district magistrate, how would you handle the pressure to allow a festival like the Pooram while ensuring public safety is never compromised? They're testing your decision-making, your ability to negotiate, and your fundamental commitment to the rule of law. You need to start thinking about a balanced, firm answer right now. So we'll leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Is the act of declaring something a state-specific disaster a sign of a proactive, effective solution? Or is it just a reactive measure that essentially papers over a much deeper, systemic failure to prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place? Keep thinking critically. All the best.